Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. Episode 35 coming at you. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, and I apologize if I'm a little stuffed up, a little snuffy. I'm just recovering from the flu over the weekend, so that was fun as I got to miss my favorite Supercross racer get a win here in Arizona. Would have been my first time seeing Ken Roczen get the win. Super bummed about that, and didn't get to do much for the Super Bowl, just trying to recover as I head to Salt Lake City this weekend for a ski trip, 4 ski hills in 6 days, 2 days of traveling. Really excited for some R&R, some just time in nature, shredding the POW that Utah has to offer. But I know you guys don't care about shredding the POW. You guys care about that MMA action. We got plenty of it in store as we recap UFC Vegas 86 and we preview the second pay-per-view card of 2024, UFC 298, going down in Anaheim, California. So let's jump right in. Some fights that have been booked. We have Bill Algeo taking on Kyle Nelson March 30th on that fight night card. 2 veterans, 2 good scrappy quality fighters. It should be a fun matchup. Probably the more surprising one, we have Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Bekzat Almakhan March 2nd here soon. But Bekzat making his UFC debut. Umar, a ranked fighter, a guy that is thought of very highly. It just seems like nobody wants a piece of the Nurmagomedov. We got Emily Ducote taking on Vanessa Demopoulos March 18th. 2 young women. That'll be a good scrap for them. We got Felipe Lins actually rebooked against Jan Kutalaba for UFC 299. They just keep adding to that fantastic card in Miami. I am not mad about it as that is only a month away. One of my other trips I have coming up. We have Joe Anderson Brito taking on Jack Shore at UFC 301. Again, that has been announced to be in Rio de Janeiro. So a Brazilian on the card there. Very good featherweight showdown. 2 very good strikers. In the flyweight division, Charles Johnson wasn't wasting any time after his last win. He's taking on Jake Hadley May 11th. Should be a quality flyweight showdown. We have Terrence McKinney taking on Esteban Rabovics, also on that May 11th card. Always fun when T-Rex is in the octagon. And then the Jairzinho Rozenstruik Shamil Gaziev fight is moved to the main event for the March 2nd fight night card after the main event got scrapped due to, I think, someone getting injured. So not a lot of fights announced this week. Supposedly Dana White announced just probably about an hour before I got on this beautiful Tuesday evening. Dana White announced that after UFC 298 in the post-fight press conference, sometimes they announce it up on the screen as well, they will announce the UFC 300 main event. Supposedly there's 2 potential fights being announced there as well. So there is now a timeline for UFC 300 going down on Saturday. We have in the boxing world 2 solid names being booked, 3 solid names, 4 really. We got Ryan Garcia taking on Devin Haney on 420. That should be a solid fight to see Ryan Garcia back since his loss. And then we have the great Canelo Alvarez taking on Jermall Charlo May 4th, right on Cinco de Mayo weekend. So Ryan Garcia, Canelo Alvarez, Devin Haney, Jermall Charlo for all of you boxing fiends. But we are going to recap this past weekend's event. UFC Fight Night Vegas 86. For the picks here at Bows and TKOs, I was 7-4 with 1 no contest. So a little bit better than last weekend. That puts the overall record 35 episodes deep at 217 wins, 102 losses, and 5 no contest draws, whatever they could be. And on the year, that is 24-16. We're +8, 2 draws or no contests. So some good fights that we did not break down. We had Hyder Emil in his UFC debut get a round 2 TKO over Fernie Garcia, who took this fight on short notice, but Hyder Emil was all over him. This was just a classic clang and bang, and actually Fernie Garcia, the fight got announced when he was called out on his feet. He was just defending himself completely out of it. So one hell of a scrap there. We had Bogdan Guskov with a round 1 knockout over Zach Pauga. That was a performance of the night, 50 G's. Fighting with his hands down, bam! Landed a couple clean ones on Zach Pauga. That was an underdog pick that I had on the night. We also had Carlos Prats with a round 2 knockout over Trevin Giles. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Carlos. What a nice knockout that was. And then another underdog win here that we had predicted. Ihor Poteria with a unanimous decision over Robert Brizik. Nice underdog performance by Poteria. But we're going to kick it off. The first fight of the evening in the prelims, we had Daniel Marcos, the fight that was a no contest against Arichi Lang. I'm getting to say his name now after the telecast. But yeah, this was a great first round until the no contest in the second round. It was a ton of fun, high volume striking for these bantamweights. You know, I did think Marcos was on his way to win after dealing some serious damage in the first round. Arichi Lang's nose was all broke up. And then round 2 was just nuts. It was Marcos eye poke, Arichi Lang eye poke, Marcos ball shot, Arichi Lang ball shot, Marcos ball shot, fight's over. Arichi Lang took the full 5 minutes. The fight was called off. Could not continue. So bummer to see it end that way, especially for Daniel, who probably feels like he got a win robbed from him. And when we break down the stats, Daniel landed 84 total strikes, 81 of those significant. Arichi Lang had 45 total insignificant, so he doubled up the action, and it was being the aggressor bringing the fight to Arichi Lang. You know, that might be the coward's way out, so to speak. I'm not trying to say that Arichi Lang's character is on the line here. But Daniel stays undefeated. He is now 3-0 in the UFC with 1 no contest. Arichi Lang sticks with his 1 fight winning streak after the no contest. Honestly, I doubt they booked this fight. I wouldn't rebook this fight. So if that's the case, give me Daniel and Montel Jackson a little step up. And for Arichi Lang, he could fight Miles Johns. And then further in the prelims, another underdog that came to hate. We had Max Griffin with a split decision victory over Jeremiah Wells. And man, this fight was such a close, hard-fought battle. It was really Max being patient, especially early in the fight, and coming forward and attacking with very clean, straight technical strikes. While Jeremiah, on the other hand, is like the completely opposite style. He's throwing these huge 100% power bombs from all angles and was literally exploding at Max. He would cover the whole canvas, distance of the shorter canvas, because the Apex has a smaller octagon. But he would cover the whole mat, come in, explode at Max. Max ate a couple good shots. And I know on social, when they showed the tweets, or the X's, I guess you should say, up on the screen, and while I was on Twitter, there was definitely mixed scorecards. Some people thought all rounds were a little bit everywhere, maybe besides round 2. But I think the judges did get this fight right, although it was very, very close. I had Max winning round 1, especially with the late takedown. He matched Jeremiah's takedown, and he won round 3. Jeremiah won round 2. But for this fight, as crazy as different styles these guys had, the further the fight went on, I feel like it wore and slowed down Jeremiah Wells more. You can't have those 100% volume gas shots, And that's a big difference in the fight because the guy does hit so hard. It allows Max to come in, be more forward, be a little bit more aggressive as the fight went on. And again, props to Max for eating some of those shots. Jeremiah ate some good shots on Max part two. Both guys definitely were trying to get the finish. Breaking down the stats, Max landed 36 total strikes, 26 of those significant, and he had 1 takedown in 2 attempts, so 50%. And Jeremiah landed 43 total strikes, 32 of those significant. He had a takedown. He was 1 for 2 as well. And both men also scored exactly 1 minute and 40 seconds of control time. So you say, Shane, look at those stats. Jeremiah has more total strikes than significant. They both have a takedown, both 1 minute 40 of control time. Yeah, for sure. But this is round via round, right? Although Jeremiah got a takedown and landed a couple strikes, Max was controlling the octagon. He landed the cleaner strikes, the more damaging strikes. He got the takedown at the end of the round and controlled majority of the round there. Jeremiah easily won round 2. I thought Max easily won round 3. So that's how it is, round-based scoring for those of you that forget. So Max now ends his 1-fight losing streak. He does start a new winning streak. He is 2-2 since 2022. And I've been impressed with Max. You know, he's getting older, and he's been there, done that, fought a lot of names, had his ups and downs, but he's fighting very clean and technical later in his career, which, you know, some people towards the back half of their 30s, it don't matter. They're on a steep decline. I have not seen that from Max at this level. And Jeremiah extends his losing streak to 2. He is 3-2 since 2022, though. Had a good 2022. So where do these guys go next? I honestly think the perfect fight, next fight for Max is Carlston Harris. Carlston Harris defeated Jeremiah Wells previously as well. And for Jeremiah, how about a scrap with the young, previously undefeated fighter who suffered his first loss, Gabriel Bonfim. Moving on to the light heavyweights before the main card, we had Marcin Prachnio with a unanimous decision over Devin Clark. This was a fight that was so damn close, hard to pick. I did get the pick wrong. You got to pick somebody. The discussion that was really being had coming into this fight was, in my opinion, Devin Clark's underperformances. And he said that to get back on the winning track, he was going to focus on his wrestling, get his wrestling roots flowing. And I expected that, but that was not the case in this fight, as it was really Marcin's non-traditional, footwork, being too much, those crazy angles and strikes that he came in was really just keeping Clark stuck. It looked like he was stuck in mud. He was just kind of chilling there for a lot of the fight and not being super aggressive. And Devin Clark is an athletic specimen. I mean, the dude's massive. His quads are like A.J. Dillon quads. I'm like, man, come on, throw some kicks in there. Instead of one strike here, one kick there, follow it up with some combos. And I'm not too sure if it was that Prachnio had too much good movement, he couldn't time it, or what the deal was, but it seemed like he was stuck in mud for most of the evening. He was not bringing the fight forward. Prachnio was just sitting at striking range and firing off combinations that was working at his will. And at the very end of round 3, Prachnio, from all the strikes, he was, basically landing on Devin as a punching bag. He completely gassed himself out. And when I say completely, if you ask the guy to run up some stairs, I don't think he could have. The guy was completely gassed, and Clark had an opportunity, was teeing off on him. He just really didn't look that aggressive to finish it. He could have created some separation and just kept grounding and pounding. I thought he could have sought a finish in round 3, but maybe he was gassed from being stuck in mud through the fight. I don't know. Kind of a weird fight. Statistically, Devin landed 53 total and significant strikes, and he was 0 for 2 in his takedown attempts. The takedowns came later in the fight when he was clearly getting outstruck, and they were sloppy attempts really far out, but you got to credit Prachnio. He knew Devin was probably going to take some shots. Marcin landed 112 total strikes, 101 of those significant, and he was 1 for 1 on his own takedown attempts. So did not see that coming. So now Devin extends his losing streak to 2. He is 2-3 since 2022. And Marcin ends his 1-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak and is 2-2 since 2022. So I would love to see Marcin fight Da-Un Jung next. I think that would be the appropriate match. And for Devin, he could take on Maxime Grishin. I think that would make a ton of sense. But brutal night in the office for Devin Clark. Nice win for Procdio. Moving on to the main card. I really couldn't believe this one. Rodolfo Vieira with a round 1 submission via my favorite submission, the arm triangle choke, over Armen Petrosian. This was a performance of the night. The black belt hunter, 50 G's. And the reason I can't believe this and why it's interesting to me is you let Rodolfo basically close distance, slowly go down and grab your leg to get you down for an easy single takedown. That's the one thing you cannot do in this fight. And that early on, this was probably a minute in. Maybe 2 minutes. I can't remember exactly. But it was the first half of round 1. And the guy doesn't take a shot trying to do that. He doesn't kick him. He doesn't do anything. He just lets him go down, grab his leg, boom, easy takedown. And obviously, as the black belter you would expect from a guy nicknamed the Black Belt Hunter, he was able to progress positions, get an arm triangle submission, and that's all it was early in round 1. And the controversy here was right before Armen was going out, he did a soft double tap, which is definitely him tapping. But once the ref pulled off Rodolfo, Armen acted like he was getting up and trying to continue the fight. And then he was trying to debate that he didn't tap. He was upset. But I'm glad that they, I don't know if they could have resumed the fight anyways. But they kept the situation what it was because he clearly tapped. Kind of weird sight. I'm sure he will watch the film back and understand that he was probably going out. Statistically, it only took Rodolfo 14 total and 6 significant strikes. He had 3 takedowns, a submission attempt, and 2 minutes and 46 seconds of control time. And Armen landed 14 total and 9 significant strikes. So next, I think it would be great for Rodolfo to fight Brad Tavares, who also fought on this card. That's a big win for him. And for Armen, how about Abdul Razak Al Hassan? 2 very powerful strikers. That would be a blast. Moving on, we had the OG, Michael Johnson, with a unanimous decision over Darius Flowers. And this was interesting because I figured this would be a good striking battle, but Darius was really controlling the fight when it was only a kickboxing fight. When they were standing there and trading shots, he was having a ton of success with the leg kicks on Michael. I didn't expect that. So Michael had to go to the old grappling heavy well to get his advantage, still the decision. And by round 3, with him getting those easy takedowns, blast double legs by Michael Johnson, still at the age that he's in, putting in that work. You love to see it. He exhausted Flowers, the younger fighter. Flowers had some decent strikes, not just the kicks, but also some power strikes. And he was having a massive amount of success while it was a kickboxing fight. And he made a guy who likes to brawl turn into grappler. So I did not quite see that fully happening. I knew Michael probably would mix in some grappling, but I figured he'd be more successful while they were trading strikes. Statistically, Michael landed 80 total strikes, 61 of them significant. He had 4 takedowns and 8 attempts, so 50%. And he had 6 minutes of control time compared to Darius's 52 total strikes, 33 of them significant, and he was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts of his own. So Michael now ends his 1-fight losing streak. He does start a new winning streak and moves to 3-2 since 2022. And Darius extends his losing streak to 2, and he is still seeking his first UFC win after the Contender Series victory. So I would love to see the OG veteran take on Rafa Garcia next. And for Darius, he could take on another OG veteran in Clay Guida. And then we had some scraps. a certified banger, exactly like we thought it would be. We had RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez with a round 3 TKO over Brad Tavares. And as expected, this fight went everywhere. It was a gritty, hard-fought battle. Gregory did his best RoboCop impression. He moved forward like a robot, possessed serious power in his strikes. He out-wrestled Brad also. He had takedowns in round 1 and 2. And after the top control and the damage that he delivered and that was landed, by round 3, Brad really didn't have anything left. Gregory got the finish, an impressive win, an impressive finish. What a fun fight this was for fight fans. Now, statistically, Brad landed 42 total strikes, 37 of those significant, compared to Gregory's 79 total and 71 significant strikes. RoboCop also had 2 takedowns and 6 attempts, and he had 3 minutes of control time. So Gregory now extends his winning streak to 2. He is 4-2 since 2022, 6 fights in 2 years. The guy's been active. And then Brad ends his 1-fight winning streak and starts a new losing streak. He is 1-3 since 2022. So for me, the next fight for RoboCop, we got to give him a top 15. Somebody like Andre Muniz or Roman Dolidze. And for Brad, I think a fight with Rodolfo Vieira, like I mentioned earlier, that's the one to make. And then the coming out party for Mr. 50K. And damn right, he got 50K for that performance. We had Dan Ige with a round 1 knockout over Andre Fili. He got the 50 G's and he got the walk-off KO. Now this was, to preface a short notice fight that Andre subbed in for. The interesting storyline is that both of these guys have actually trained together for quite some time. And it's interesting because if Andre's taken this fight on short notice, you would think there was something that he liked. But Dan put that to rest pretty damn quickly with the vicious right-hand knockout. And it only took Dan 11 total and significant strikes with that knockdown. And Andre landed 8 total and significant strikes. So Dan now ends that 1-fight losing streak, which was a bad loss, starts a new winning streak. He is 3-2 since 2022, and he moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 12. Now Andre ends his 1-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak and is 2-3 since 2022. Much like I was saying about RoboCop, I just feel like Dan deserves a chance to fight up now. I think this is great for both men based off what happened recently. But give me Dan Ige and Arnold Allen. Please. Let's make that happen. And for Andre, he can square up with Nate Landwehr. A little Nate the Train action. And then in the main event, a little bit of a shocker here. Jack Hermanson with a unanimous decision over Joe Pyfer. And the reason I say a little bit of a shocker, because Joe was coming out hot. Be like Joe, he was doing his thing. He had the signature power and aggressiveness in the first 2 rounds. But the smart veteran that Jack is, he was fighting for a 5-round fight. The main event like like it's set up to be. He wanted Joe to prove that he can last 25 minutes at that crazy pace. And during the first 2 rounds when Joe was firing away, Jack was doing his best to shell up, kind of shrugging some of those shots off on his shoulders and letting Joe gas himself out. Now, I thought that Jack might be on the decline coming into this fight. I thought he'd be on his way to slip up, and he showcased that was not the case at all, even after a full calendar year off with no fights. One of the more critical parts of this fight was also what Joe thought was a potential eye poke, but it was actually a punch to the eye, a clean punch. He tried to protest it. They let the fight keep going, which was a great call by the ref. But Joe said after the fight that took his vision away, so he couldn't do what he wanted the rest of the fight. But with 2 minutes left of the second, the momentum was clearly swinging towards the Joker anyways. Joe could say maybe if I had my eye, blah, blah, blah. But Jack, he controlled the latter 3 rounds and part of that second round. He was even able to get Joe down. He got a takedown to ice the fight. And Joe just laid on his back, accepted guard, didn't have the energy to even try to get back up. What a performance by the Joker, man. And what a big learning lesson for Joe Pyfer. Now, statistically, Jack landed 188 total strikes. 121 of those were significant. He did have a takedown in 2 attempts and 3 minutes of control time. And Joe landed 95 total strikes, 92 of those significant, and he was 0 for 6 in takedown attempts. Now, Jack ends his 1-fight losing streak and starts a new winning streak. He is now 2-2 since 2022 and moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 10. And Joe ends his 5-fight winning streak and starts a new losing streak and suffers his first loss in the UFC. So, Jack mentioned in his post-fight interview the opportunity to potentially fight Nasruddin Imavov, and I completely agree with that, especially after that performance. He deserves to fight up in the rankings as well. These OGs showing out, defending their top 15 against young fighters. Let them fight up in the top 15. And for Joe, a banger. Give me Jung-Young Park. I think that would be a fantastic fight for both men. But that was the Apex card. Joe Pyfer, learning lesson. Dan Ige still in the show. RoboCop doing his thing. And the OG Michael Johnson still out there getting dubs. But this weekend, again, UFC 298. We have the early prelims at 3 p.m. Pacific on UFC Fight Pass. I believe it should still be on ESPN Plus as well. And then we have the prelims at 5 p.m. on ESPN or ESPN Plus. And the pay-per-view kicks off at 7 p.m. Pacific. Some good fights that we will not break down. We have the Contender Series alums, Oban Elliott, Danny Barlow, and Bredson Ribeiro making their UFC debuts. And then we have the Road to the UFC winner, Rinya Nakamura, taking on Ultimate Fighter alum Carlos Vera. That fight I'm super excited about. We're going to kick it off, though, with the first fight in the early prelims. We have Andrea KGB Lee, 35 years old, with a 13-8 record and the number 15 next to her name, taking on Miranda Fear the Maverick. She's 26 years old with a 14-5 record. And, it's kind of crazy we're getting a ranked fighter in the top of the prelims here. But both of these women are in completely different stages of their careers. Although Andrea is ranked, she may be fighting for her UFC career, even though she is ranked. Miranda has had some road bumps in her UFC journey, but she's still young and looking for a chance to get back into the top 15. Breaking this down, Andrea has a Kyokushin style, a black belt in Kyokushin. She's got a brown belt in Judo and BJJ. She's an Invicta, Legacy FC, an LFA alum. She was a former LFA champion. She's on a 3-fight losing streak. She has not won since November of 2021. 5 of her 13 wins are via submission, and she does have a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Miranda trains out of Team Elevation. She's got a black belt in BJJ. She's an Invicta alum. She's on a 1-fight winning streak. She is 3-1 since 2022, and 7 of her 12 wins are via submission. I do think Andrea is going to have the better striking in this fight. Her kickboxing and boxing background, I think, will pay dividends. I haven't been super impressed with Miranda's striking. For Miranda, clearly she has the age advantage. She's still learning a ton. She could grow a lot from fight to fight. But when it comes down to grappling and BJJ, I think it's a closer fight than most people think. I do think Miranda will have the wrestling advantage for the takedown opportunities. She's going to probably look to get Andrea down early and often, get top control, tire the older fighter out, get some ground and pound. But this fight is razor close in my mind. I think Andrea is going to outlast Miranda in a tit-for-tat fight. I'm sure there's takedowns from both women, some shots back and forth. And I bet you it comes down to a really close split decision on the judges' scorecard. I really just think that watching Andrea Lee against Macy Barber, which wasn't that long ago, she out-grappled Macy Barber, and she did have good striking advantages there. And I don't know if she's going to, technically she had a split decision loss against Macy, but with as well as she fought Macy, I don't know how Miranda is going to deliver in a better way. For that reason, I am taking the underdog, Andrea Lee, but I am avoiding her on a parlay if possible. Starting with the dogs, they're coming to eat on the pay-per-view. Moving into the prelims, we got Pizarro Marcos Rogeria de Lima, 38 years old, with a 21-10-1 record, and the number 15 next to his name, taking on Justin Badman Tafa. I'm looking at the odds real quick. Sorry, should have this up all red T. He is 30 years old with a 7-3 record. Now here is another fight between two men in different stages in their career. Marcos, although he's coming off a loss, has had some quality wins versus opponents better than Justin has ever faced, in my opinion. He's a well-rounded fighter. He does well mixing in the striking and grappling throughout the fight. But the question is how is he going to handle coming back after that nasty knee that he suffered against Derek Lewis in Salt Lake? I got to see that in person. And Marcos said he messed up his teeth. It messed him up pretty bad. And Justin is a hard-hitting thrower who has had mixed results in the UFC, but he's coming off his best win versus Austin Lane in an early knockout. And Austin's a big dude. He's just entering his prime at 30 years old. He's only getting better. But breaking this one down, Marcos, he trains out of ATT. He's got a black belt in BJJ. He's an Ultimate Fighter Brazil and Strikeforce alum. He's in a one-fight losing streak and is 2-2 since 2022. 14 of his 21 wins are via knockout. 5 of his 9 losses are via submission. And he does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, Justin, he has a blue belt in BJJ. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He had the no contest with Lane from the eye poke in between. And all 7 of his wins come via knockout. So obviously, a guy on a 3-fight winning streak, 7 wins via knockout, not all in the UFC, but he's full of confidence at the right time. But I think the vets are going to show the young fighters a thing or two in Anaheim. I'm going to take Marcos Rogeria. He is the Vegas favorite, and we are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Amanda Lemos, 36 years old with a 13-3-1 record, and the number 3 next to her name, taking on Mackenzie Dern, 30 years old with a 13-4 record, and the number 7 next to her name. Now, both women here, they're looking to get a sour taste out of their mouths after their biggest fights. They took L's in their biggest fights in their UFC careers. This is a clash of style affair, as Amanda is going to have a striking advantage, and Mackenzie's definitely going to have a grappling advantage. Breaking this one down, Amanda is tied for the most knockdowns landed in UFC women's strawweight division history with 5. She's a Jungle Fight alum and former champion with 2 successful title defenses. She's on a 1-fight losing streak. She is 2-2 since 2022. And 8 of her 13 wins are via finish. Now, Mackenzie, she's got a BJJ style. She's got a 3rd-degree black belt in BJJ. She's recently changed coaches. She's not with Henry Hooft anymore. She won gold in the 2015 ADCC Worlds, in the Worlds and the World Cup. In 2014, she won the Nogi Worlds. And in 2016, she won the Worlds and the World Cup. Her grappling, some of the best. Her dad is a legend. She has the most submission wins in UFC women's strawweight division history with 4. And she also has the most submission attempts in the UFC women's strawweight division with 15. She's on a 1-fight losing streak. She's also 2-2 since 2022. And 7 of her 13 wins are via submission. Now, Mackenzie's striking versus Jessica Andrade, which was barely 3 months ago, it looked like a regression. And Jessica made her pay. I don't think it's going to be much difference in this fight when she's going to try to trying to strike against Amanda Lemos. But again, Amanda is nearing 37. She's only fought once since November of 2022. That was a win for Amanda against a very good striker in Marina Rodriguez, who also outstruck Mackenzie Dern pretty badly. But Mackenzie's going to have to hope age and time is getting to Amanda. It's slowing her down, and that she is confident she could get Amanda down, submit her, and I'm just not betting on that. For that reason, I'm taking Amanda Lemos, but I am avoiding her on a parlay if possible. Both women definitely need this win. Big fight. Very, very hard to pick. Moving on into the main card, we got Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, 30 years old with an 11-2 record and the number 14 next to his name, taking on Roman Kopylov, 32 years old with a 12-2 record. And to kick off the pay-per-view, we're getting 2 men in their primes. They're rolling at this point in their career, and they're looking to make a fun, action-packed affair to really get the Anaheim crowd roaring to start the evening. Now, Anthony, he's an orthodox fighter. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's an LFA and Contender Series alum. He had the 2021 Submission of the Year against Rodolfo Vieira. He's on a 4-fight winning streak that dates back to 2021, so he hasn't been super active. 7 of his 11 wins are via submission. Meanwhile, Roman, he's a southpaw fighter. 2 of his last 3 fights have been performance of the night. He's been showing up. He's been showing out. I saw him take a short notice fight in Salt Lake, and he got a head kick knockout. He's on a 4-fight winning streak as well. 11 of his 12 wins are via knockout. And he is a Fight Nights Global alum and former champion with 1 successful title defense. Now, this is really interesting and ironic because the fight was originally supposed to happen in September of 2023, but Fluffy was set to fight Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis withdrew due to injury, so he was then replaced by Roman Kopylov, but then Alexander withdrew due to an injury. So the fight that was originally supposed to happen this time was Fluffy versus Ikram Aliskerov, and now Roman Kopylov is filling in again, and the fight is finally happening. That's some crazy magic in the fight world there. And this is somewhat of a short notice fight for Roman. I think it took it like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And Anthony, he's looked very good in his last 2 fights, but so has Roman. Alexander has been in the UFC for quite some time. He's fought very good competition. He's got good wins like Brendan Allen, although it was, quite a while ago. Jun Young Park, Rodolfo Vieira, Marc-Andre Barrios, and Edmund Shabazian. Now, Roman has been very solid in the UFC, has some quality wins of his own, but I definitely think this is his stiffest test yet. I expect Anthony to move a lot in this fight, mix in grappling to stay away from Roman's power, and I think that's going to help him get the victory. For that reason, I'm taking Anthony Hernandez. I'm putting him on my parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We got Merab, the Machine Dvalishvili, 33 years old with a 16-4 record and the number 2 next to his name, taking on Henry Triple C Cejudo, 37 years old with a 16-3 record and the number 3 next to his name. Now, the fact that Merab has to fight again before a title shot, it's definitely sad, but this is the life that he has to deal with. and now has to fight the older former champion who fought his teammate in May of last year, which is Aljamain Sterling. So I don't think Merab has for this camp, but he does train out of Serra Longo Fight Team. He's been in Vegas, I think, with Team Syndicate. He has a black belt in judo. He has the most unanimous decision wins in UFC bantamweight division history with 7. The most takedowns landed in UFC bantamweight division history was 61. And he had the most takedowns attempted in a bout in UFC history. He had 49 against Petr Yan. And I think that's a big reason why he's not fighting for a title. A lot of decision wins and takedowns. He is a Cage Fury and Ring of Combat alum. He was a Ring of Combat former champion with 1 successful title defense. He's on a 9-fight winning streak that dates back to 2018. And he does have a 4-inch reach advantage. Now, Henry has a freestyle wrestling style. He trains out of Fight Ready. That's his own gym here in Phoenix. He has a yellow belt in Shotokan Karate. He won gold in the 2008 Olympics in Beijing for freestyle, and he won the 06 and 07 U.S. National Championships. He is the former bantamweight and flyweight champion. He had 1 successful title defense at both weights, and he is the 7th 2-division champion in UFC history, the 4th simultaneous 2-division champ. He had the 2018 upset of the year against Demetrius Johnson, which won him the flyweight title. He is in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. He was inducted in 2018. And currently he's on a 1-fight losing streak, which was his only fight since he came out of retirement, and he was off for 3 years. 8 of his 16 wins are via knockout, and he is also a Legacy FC alum. Now, this is a brutal fight to pick. This should be a title eliminator fight, but depending on how these guys show out, Corey Sandhagen might slide in instead. But Merab has been running through people with his cardio and wrestling. That's why he's the machine. You would think that Henry would be able to block Merab's strengths with his wrestling skill, but Aljo was able to get Henry down and he out-grappled him. You know, Henry has been out for quite some time. In the new UFC countdown, he announced that he was changing coaches. I guess that this is just a bunch of BS. That's not the case. You know, one of the strengths that Henry's known for is the team and how they prepare their game plan. He's shown that against very good fighters. TJ Dillashaw, Demetrius Johnson. I mean, we're talking some of the best in the game. And after a 3-year layoff, he looked solid against Aljo. He battled his way in that fight. You know, Merab trained with Aljo. He's going to be, you know, he's probably going to have a lot of preparation and understanding of what that game plan was against Henry. Merab is coming off nice wins. He's got Petr Yan, Jose Aldo, Marlon Moraes. But can Henry come in and get the job done? I really don't know. I do think 3 rounds is going to benefit him so he doesn't get completely exhausted. I think he shows up in shape. He's hungrier than ever. I am going to take Triple C. I bet against him a lot in my day. I'm not betting against him here. He's at plus 170. I'm taking Henry Cejudo. The underdog's coming to eat. I'm not putting that on a parlay, though. Do not have the balls to do so. But moving on, we got 3 more fights. Some massive names in this card. The main card is stacked. We got Jeff Hands of Steel Neal, 33 years old with a 15-5 record and the number 8 next to his name, taking on the future Ian Machado Gary, 26 years old, undefeated with a 13-0 record and the number 10 next to his name. Now, this fight is another step up for Ian, but in my mind, it isn't a massive leap from the Neil Magny fight. I think Neil's just a better striker. Now, Jeff Neal is claiming that he's going to save America by winning this fight. My guess is he's going to come in super aggressive. He's going to look to get the finish early and take some risks. Breaking it down, Ian now trains at a shoot box Diego Lima. He left Killcliff. He got kicked out of Leon Edwards' gym. There's been all the drama going on in his life. He has a black belt in judo. He's a Cage Warriors alum and former champion. He's undefeated on a 13-fight winning streak. He's 6-0 in the UFC, and 7 of his 13 wins are via knockout. And remember, he's only 26. He's not even really close to his prime. Now, Jeff trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a purple belt in BJJ. His last 2 fights have been Fight of the Night and Performance of the Night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He is a Legacy FC, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is only 1-1 since 2022. And 9 of his 15 wins are via knockout. Now, this bout was actually originally supposed to take place in August of last year, but Neil withdrew due to health reasons, so Ian ended up having that Neil Magny fight instead. Now, Neil hasn't been super active. His last fight against Shavkat, he did last until the 3rd round. He had some moments actually in that fight against a very, very good Shavkat. It ended up being a catchweight bout due to him missing weight, which could have played a little bit of part of that as well. But that fight was almost a year ago, and before that he knocked out Vicente Luque. Now Ian, he, like I said, he's got a lot of drama circling around him. It's hard to know where his mindset's at. On the countdown, it looks like he's got a clear head. He's loving the Brazil time, and he's got his family there. It seems like he's got good training with a good gym. He seems to be happy, but that's on camera. You never know. I do believe that Ian is going to be too crisp of a striker for Neil. His kicks are a weapon, a lot like what Bilal Muhammad's been doing, just leg kicking or, high kicking, body kicking, and just kicking in general the shit out of people. I think that's going to be a big difference in this fight, like it were for Ian in his last few fights. And I'd be surprised if there was a finish here. But if Jeff is going to win, it's going to be by finishing Gary. I don't think he will outstrike him and outpoint him over the course of 3 rounds. For that reason, I am taking the future. I am not putting him on a parlay if possible. Moving on. We got the co-main event. We got Robert the Reaper Whittaker, 33 years old with a 25-7 record and the number 3 next to his name, taking on Paulo the Eraser Costa, 32 years old with a 14-2 record and the number 6 next to his name. What's crazy is Robert Whittaker got up the mountain so fast. He's only 33. He's right in the middle of his prime. He's still fighting the best to his potential. And it almost seems like after his last loss, he's probably like late 30s, at least 5 more years older than he is. And he's not. But you want to talk about a banger. This screams clang and bang all day long. Don't blink. We got the former champion, a guy you could say was a gatekeeper to a title shot in the division, and one of the more intriguing men in the division. Paulo's super funny. He's got the secret juice, but he has struggled to show up for his booked fights and make them happen. So until this weigh-in happens, I really don't know if it's going to happen. But Paulo hasn't fought in a year and a half, and that was against an almost 40-year-old dude in Luke Rockhold. And then before that, it was a year in between each fight. He never fought more than once a year, except back in his debut year. When he debuted in the UFC in 2017, he had 3 fights. I know a lot of this has been contracts. He's trying to get paid more. I think he finally got a new contract, and now he's happy, so we shouldn't deal with the canceled fights anymore. But a lot of those fights were announced, too, before he had actually signed the contract. So keep that in mind. Hopefully, we don't have that issue here. Breaking this down, Robert has a black belt in Hapkido, Goju Ryu Karate, and BJJ. He was on the Australian national team for freestyle wrestling. He is an Ultimate Fighter alum and champion. He's obviously the former middleweight champion. He's the first fighter of Australian nationality to win a UFC championship. The first New Zealand-born fighter to win a championship. He had the 2018 Fight of the Year against Yoel Romero. The 2017 Fighter of the Year. He was also the International Fighter of the Year that year. He is on a 1-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2022. 9 of his 24 wins are via knockout, 5 via submission, so 14 of his 24 wins are via finish. 3 of his 7 losses are via knockout. To knock out or to be knocked out. He also has an interesting 3.5-inch leg reach advantage for those kicks. Now, Paulo has had 5 canceled fights, 3 actual fights since 2020. He's got a black belt in BJJ. He's an Ultimate Fighter Brazil and Jungle Fight alum. He's a former Jungle Fight champion with 1 successful title defense. He's tied with DDP, or Dricus du Plessis, for the most significant strikes landed per minute in the UFC middleweight division with 6.49. He is on a 1-fight winning streak, which was his only fight since 2021. 11 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, the great part about this fight is majority of it is going to come down to striking. It's going to be high volume. It's going to be bombs galore. And again, it's wild to think that Robert is just now in the middle of his prime, coming off the toughest loss in his UFC career, where he technically got knocked down by a DDP jab in the second round. But Robert has mentioned overlooking DDP in that fight. I do expect the hungriest and best version of Rob, Bobby Knuckles style. But Paulo possesses serious power. So does Robert Whittaker. But I think Bobby is going to have better defense. He's going to have better footwork, a better IQ, and that's going to pay big dividends in this fight. I don't expect Costa just to bull rush and come forward against a big, sturdy, heavy hitter like Robert. Now, Whittaker, I do think will have a big grappling advantage. It's going to be interesting to see if he uses that in this fight or if he just tries to outstrike Paulo. That's going to make the fight super interesting, though. But Robert is just too well-rounded. He's too tough. He's too skilled. For that reason, I'm taking the Reaper. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. And then we have the main event of the evening. We got Alexander the Great Volkanovski, 35 years old with a 26-3 record, taking on Ilya El Matador Topuria, 27 years old, rocking an undefeated 14-0 record and the number 3 next to his name. Now, Alex, he's been full of exciting fights since 2018. It's been nonstop. Multiple a year, one of the more active champions. This is the first time a prospect in the featherweight division, the division he's reigned, has brought much excitement to get a title shot since he fought Brian Ortega in 2021, and we know how much fun of a fight that was. This time, though, Alex is getting a well-rounded fighter with some serious boxing skills that's full of confidence. It's going to be a fun one. Breaking it down, Alex trains out of City Kickboxing. He has a black belt in BJJ. He has 5 successful title defenses at featherweight. He's the first Australian-born fighter to win a championship. He's the 2023 Fight of the Year against Islam Makhachev, the first one. He has the highest striking differential in UFC featherweight history at 3.03. He's got the longest fight time in featherweight at 17 minutes and 40 seconds because all he does is fight title shots that's longer than a 3-minute fight or 3-round fight. He has the most leg kicks landed in a featherweight fight, 75 against Max Holloway the first time. The most total leg strikes landed as well, which was 81 against Jose Aldo. He's the former pound-for-pound number 1 fighter in the world. He was the 2019 Breakout Fighter of the Year, the 2022 Fighter of the Year, and he had the 2021 Fight of the Year against Brian Ortega. He is on a 1-fight losing streak, but at featherweight, he's technically on a 12-fight winning streak in the UFC. But technically outside an all-pro, he has a 23-fight winning streak. The only losses have come against Islam at the lightweight division. 13 of his 26 wins are via knockout. 2 of his losses are via knockout. He has a 2.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Ilya is an orthodox fighter. He has a black belt in BJJ. His last 3 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. That's why he earned the title fight. And also probably because, he hasn't fought Max Holloway yet. So Alex actually gets a chance to fight a prospect. He is a Cage Warriors and Brave alum. He is undefeated on a 14-fight winning streak. He is 6-0 in the UFC. 8 of his 14 wins are via submission, 4 via knockout, 12 of his 14 wins are via finish. Now, Ilya is an extremely talented fighter. I do not doubt this at all. I think the fact that he is facing Volk after that knockout loss, I think it's just the wrong time. He mentioned not training in that short notice fight against Islam Makhachev. He was drinking. He wasn't taking camp seriously. I think he's going to be super hungry to defend the strap that he's defended so many times and has dominated this weight class. There's a lot of levels to this game. In this division especially, you got really good fighters. You got Max on a whole nother level. And then you got Alex above that. It's really hard to range where Ilya is, especially since he hasn't fought Max Holloway. But Ilya is so young. He's not even in his prime. He's like Ian Gary. He's 27 years old. I know statistically fighters, especially champions that are over 35 years old, they're in bad company and they don't have much success. And Volk hilariously addressed that in the commercial about him being an old man in the snippet and clips that he posted. I just don't think Volk is on the decline right now. The biggest concern is, Volk suffering that nasty knockout barely 3 months ago. Does that have any effect on his mental game or on this fight at all? Ilya, to his credit also, has shown that he has the ability to go 5 rounds. He had the main event against Josh Emmett that was a complete beatdown on ABC, local TV, for 5 rounds. But the difference is Volk isn't just a power striker like Emmett. He's a crafty striker that usually gets what he wants. He mixes in a ton of kicks when needed. His strikes are perfection, and he is a tough, durable, strong dude. He used to be a 220-something pound rugby player. People forget that. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if Ilya looks to try to kick Volk, get some calf kicks in, see if that will be successful, because maybe he could eliminate some of the things that Volk does well by bringing the leg kick game to him, because that's worked great for Ilya recently. I'm also interested to see if either fighter actually looks to grapple in this fight. If I were to expect it to happen, I think it would come from Ilya, just to test Volk's ability there, as Brian Ortega had some success. But I'm not betting against the great Volkanovski. I'm taking Alexander. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. So UFC 298, you got Alexander, you got former champion Robert Whittaker, Henry Cejudo, a potential title eliminator fight in the bantamweight division, the undefeated Ian Machado Gary, and a action-packed main event opener, Anthony Hernandez and Roman Kopylov. I've already paid for this pay-per-view because I'll be skiing. I need to be able to watch it back on demand at my best conveniences. So I highly recommend paying for it if you're thinking about it. But up next Saturday, we have another fight night card, but no more Apex, this time in Mexico. Not at the Apex, thank goodness. And this is headlined by Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval, the second fight between them. A top heavy but solid card. The must-see fight for me is Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. The first time they fought, Brian Ortega got hurt. They didn't get to complete the fight, so excited to see that go down. This is episode 35. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.